Introduction. About 1,000 miles to the south and east of the Tinguian and Igorot is the island of Mindanao, which is inhabited by mortals and immortals entirely unknown to the mountain tribes of the north. In the northern part of this great island are the Bukidnon, timid, wild people who, attacked from time to time by the Moro on one side and the Manobo on the other, have drawn back into scattered homes in the hills. Here they live in poor dwellings raised high from the ground. Some even build in trees, they're sheltered in secret positions, making them less subject to attack. They are not a warlike people, and their greatest concern is for the goodwill of the numerous spirits who watch over their every act. At times they gather a little hemp or coffee from the hillside or along the stream bank and carry it to the coast to exchange for the bright cloth which they make into gay clothes. But they do not love work, and the most of their time is spent in resting or attending ceremonies made to gain the goodwill of the immortals. In this country the belief prevails that there are spirits in the stones, in the bolete trees, in the vines, the cliffs, and even the caves. And never does a man start on a journey or make a clearing on the mountainside until he has first besought these spirits not to be angry with him but to favor him with prosperity and bring good crops. The greatest of the spirits is Dewata Magbabea, who is so awe-inspiring that his name is never mentioned above a whisper. He lives in the sky in a house made of coins, and there are no windows in this building, for if men should look upon him they would melt into water. About the Gulf of Davao, in the southeastern part of this island, are a number of small tribes, each differing somewhat from the other in customs and beliefs. Of these the most influential are the Bagobo, who dwell on the lower slopes of Mnapo, the highest peak in the Philippines. They are very industrious, forging excellent knives, casting fine articles in brass, and weaving beautiful hemp cloth which they make into elaborate garments decorated with beads and shell discs. The men are great warriors, each gaining distinction among his people according to the number of human lives he has taken. A number of them dress in dark red suits and peculiar headbands which they are permitted to wear only after they have taken 6 lives. Notwithstanding their bravery in battle, these people fear and have great respect for the numerous spirits who rule over their lives. From a great fissure in the side of Mnapo, clouds of sulfur fumes are constantly rising, and it is believed to be in this fissure that Mandarangan and his wife Darago live, evil beings who look after the fortunes of the warriors. These spirits are feared and great care is taken to appease them with offerings, while once a year a human sacrifice is made to them. The following tales show something of the beliefs of these and the neighboring tribes in Mindanao. How the moon and the stars came to be Bukidnon, Mindanao. One day in the times when the sky was close to the ground, a spinster went out to pound rice. 1 Before she began her work, she took off the beads from around her neck and the comb from her hair, and hung them on the sky, which at that time looked like coral rock. Then she began working, and each time that she raised her pestle into the air it struck the sky. For some time she pounded the rice, and then she raised the pestle so high that it struck the sky very hard. Immediately the sky began to rise too, and it went up so far that she lost her ornaments. Never did they come down, for the comb became the moon and the beads are the stars that are scattered about. The flood story. Bukidnon, Mindanao. A long time ago there was a very big crab tree which crawled into the sea. And when he went in he crowded the water out so that it ran all over the earth and covered all the land. Now about 1 moon before this happened, a wise man had told the people that they must build a large raft. For they did as he commanded and cut many large trees, until they had enough to make 3 layers. These they bound tightly together, and when it was done they fastened the raft with a long rattan cord to a big pole in the earth. Soon after this the floods came. White water poured out of the hills, and the sea rose and covered even the highest mountains. The people and animals on the raft were safe, but all the others drowned. When the waters went down and the raft was again on the ground, it was near their old home, for the rattan cord had held. But these were the only people left on the whole earth.
Magbangal 5 Bukidnon, Mindanao.
Magbangal was a good hunter, and he often went to a certain hill where he killed wild pigs for food. One night as it was nearing the planting season, he sat in his house thinking, and after a long time he called to his wife. She came to him, and he said, "Tomorrow I shall go to the hill and clear the land for our planting, but I wish you to stay here." "Oh, let me go with you," begged his wife, "for you have no other companion." "No," said Magbangal, "I wish to go alone, and you must stay at home." So finally his wife agreed, and in the morning she arose early to prepare food for him. When the rice was cooked and the fish ready, she called him to come and eat, but he said, "No, I do not want to eat now, but I will return this afternoon and you must have it ready for me." Then he gathered up his 10 hatchets and bolos, 6 a sharpening stone, and a bamboo tube for water, and started for the hill. Upon reaching his land he cut some small trees to make a bench. When it was finished, he sat down on it and said to the bolos, "You bolos must sharpen yourselves on the stone." And the bolos went to the stone and were sharpened. Then to the hatchets he said, "You hatchets must be sharpened," and they also sharpened themselves. When all were ready, he said, "Now you bolos cut all the small brush under the trees, and you hatchets must cut the large trees." So the bolos and the hatchets went to work, and from his place on the bench Magbangal could see the land being cleared. Magbangal's wife was at work in their house weaving a skirt, but when she heard the trees continually falling she stopped to listen and thought to herself, "My husband must have found many people to help him clear our land. When he left here, he was alone, but surely he cannot cut down the trees so fast. I will see who is helping him." She left the house and walked rapidly toward the field, but as she drew nearer she proceeded more slowly, and finally stopped behind a tree. From her hiding place, she could see her husband asleep on the bench, and she could also see that the bolos and hatchets were cutting the trees with no hands to guide them. "Oh," said she, "Magbangal is very powerful. Never before have I seen bolos and hatchets working without hands, and he never told me of his power." Suddenly she saw her husband jump up, and, seizing a biolo, he cut off one of his own arms. He awoke and sat up and said, "Someone must be looking at me, for one of my arms is cut off." When he saw his wife he knew that she was the cause of his losing his arm, and as they went home together, he exclaimed, "Now I am going away. It is better for me to go to the sky where I can give the sign to the people when it is time to plant, and you must go to the water and become a fish." Soon after he went to the sky and became the constellation Magbangal, and ever since, when the people see these stars appear in the sky, they know that it is time to plant their rice. How children became monkeys. Bukidnon, Mindanao. One day a mother took her 2 children with her when she went to color cloth. Not far from her home was a mud hole 7 where the carabao liked to wallow, and to this hole she carried her cloth, some dye pots, and 2 shell spoons. After she had put the cloth into the mud to let it take up the dark color, she built a fire and put over it a pot containing water and the leaves used for dyeing. Then she sat down to wait for the water to boil, while the children played nearby. By and by, when she went to stir the leaves with a shell spoon, some of the water splashed up and burned her hand, so that she jumped and cried out. This amused the children and their laughter changed them into monkeys, and the spoons became their tails. 8. The nails of the monkeys are still black, because while they were children they had helped their mother dye the cloth. Bilanawan and Aguio. Bukidnon, Mindanao. Langona and his wife had twin boys named Bilanawan and Aguio. One day, when they were about 2 years old, the mother took Bilanawan to the field with her when she went to pick cotton. She spread the fiber she had gathered the day before on the ground to dry near the child, and while she was getting more a great wind suddenly arose which wound the cotton around the baby and carried him away. Far away to a distant land the wind took Bulanawan, and in that place he grew up.
When he was a man, he became a great warrior. 9.
One day while Bulanawan and his wife were walking along the seashore, they sat down to rest on a large, flat rock, and Bulanawan fell asleep. Now Aguio, the twin brother of Bulanawan, had become a great warrior also, and he went on a journey to this distant land, not knowing that his brother was there. It happened that he was walking along the seashore in his wardress tent on this same day, and when he saw the woman sitting on the large, flat rock, he thought her very beautiful, and he determined to steal her. As he drew near he asked her to give him some of her husband's betel nut to chew, and when she refused he went forward to fight her husband, not knowing they were brothers. As soon as his wife awakened him Bulanawan sprang up, seized her, put her in the cuff of his sleeve 11 and came forth ready to fight. Aguio grew very angry at this, and they fought until their weapons were broken, and the earth trembled. Now the two brothers of the rivals felt the earth tremble although they were far away, and each feared that his brother was in trouble. One was in the mountains and he started at once for the sea, the other was in a far land, but he set out in a boat for the scene of the trouble. They arrived at the same time at the place of battle, and they immediately joined in it. Then the trembling of the earth increased so much that Langona, the father of Aguio and Bulanawan, sought out the spot and tried to make peace. But he only seemed to make matters worse, and they all began fighting him. So great did the disturbance become that the earth was in danger of falling to pieces. Then it was that the father of Langona came and settled the trouble, and when all were at peace again they discovered that Aguio and Bulanawan were brothers and the grandsons of the peacemaker.
Origin Bagobo, Mindanao.
In the beginning there lived one man and one woman, Toglai and Taglaban. Their first children were a boy and a girl. When they were old enough, the boy and the girl went far away across the waters seeking a good place to live in.
Nothing more was heard of them until their children, the Spaniards and Americans, came back.
After the first boy and girl left, other children were born to the couple, but they all remained at Sibulan on Amapo with their parents, until Toglai and Taglaban died and became spirits. Soon after that there came a great drought which lasted for 3 years. All the waters dried up, so that there were no rivers, and no plants could live. "Surely," said the people, "Manama is punishing us and we must go elsewhere to find food and a place to dwell in." So they started out. 2 went in the direction of the sunset, carrying with them stones from Sibulan River. After a long journey they reached a place where were broad fields of cogon grass and an abundance of water, and there they made their home. Their children still live in that place and are called Magindano, because of the stones which the couple carried when they left Sibulan.
2 children of Toglai and Taglaban went to the south, seeking a home, and they carried with them women's baskets, barren.
When they found a good spot, they settled down. Their descendants, still dwelling at that place, are called Baran or Bilan, because of the women's baskets. So 2 by 2 the children of the first couple left the land of their birth. In the place where each settled a new people developed, and thus it came about that all the tribes in the world received their names from things that the people carried out of Sibulan, or from the places where they settled. All the children left him Apo save 2, a boy and a girl, whom hunger and thirst had made too weak to travel. One day when they were about to die the boy crawled out to the field to see if there was one living thing, and to his surprise he found a stalk of sugar cane growing lustily. He eagerly cut it, and enough water came out to refresh him and his sister until the rains came. Because of this, their children are called Bagobo. 12.
Lumabet Bagobo, Mindanao.
Soon after people were created on the earth, there was born a child named Lumabet, who lived to be a very, very old man. He could talk when he was but 1 day old, and all his life he did wonderful things until the people came to believe that he had been sent by Manama, the Great Spirit. When Lumabet was still a young man he had a fine dog, and he enjoyed nothing so much as taking him to the mountains to hunt.
One day the dog noticed a white deer. Lumabet and his companions started in pursuit, but the deer was very swift and they could not catch it. On and on they went until they had gone around the world, and still the deer was ahead. One by one his companions dropped out of the chase, but Lumabet would not give up until he had the deer. All the time he had but one banana and one camote, sweet potato, for food, but each night he planted the skins of these, and in the morning he found a banana tree with ripe fruit and a sweet potato large enough to eat. So he kept on until he had been around the world 9 times, and he was an old man and his hair was gray. At last he caught the deer, and then he called all the people to a great feast, to see the animal. While all were making merry, Lumabet told them to take a knife and kill his father. They were greatly surprised, but did as he commanded, and when the old man was dead, Lumabet waved his headband over him and he came to life again. 8 times they killed the old man at Lumabet's command, and the 8th time he was small like a little boy, for each time they had cut off some of his flesh. They all wondered very much at Lumabet's power, and they were certain that he was a god. One morning some spirits came to talk with Lumabet, and after they had gone he called the people to come into his house. "We cannot all come in," said the people, "for your house is small and we are many." "There is plenty of room," said he, so all went in and to their surprise it did not seem crowded. Then he told the people that he was going on a long journey and that all who believed he had great power could go with him, while all who remained behind would be changed into animals. In Buso. 13 he started out, many following him, and it was as he said. For those that refused to go were immediately changed into animals in Buso. He led the people far away across the ocean to a place where the earth and the sky meet. When they arrived they saw that the sky moved up and down like a man opening and closing his jaws. "Sky, you must go up," commanded Lumabet. But the sky would not obey. So the people could not go through. Finally Lumabet promised the sky that if he would let all the others through, he might have the last man who tried to pass. Agreeing to this, the sky opened and the people entered. But when near the last the sky shut down so suddenly that he caught not only the last man but also the long knife of the man before. On that same day, Lumabet's son, who was hunting, did not know that his father had gone to the sky. When he was tired of the chase, he wanted to go to his father, so he leaned an arrow against a bolete tree and sat down on it. Slowly it began to go down and carried him to his father's place, but when he arrived he could find no people. He looked here and there and could find nothing but a gun made of gold. 14 This made him very sorrowful and he did not know what to do until some white bees which were in the house said to him, "You must not weep, for we can take you to the sky where your father is." So he did as they bade, and rode on the gun, and the bees flew away with him, until in 3 days they reached the sky. Now, although most of the men who followed Lumabet were content to live in the sky, there was one who was very unhappy, and all the time he kept looking down on the land below. The spirits made fun of him and wanted to take out his intestines so that he would be like them and never die, but he was afraid and always begged to be allowed to go back home. Finally Manama told the spirits to allow him to go, so they made a chain of the leaves of the caron grass and tied it to his legs. Then they let him down slowly head first, and when he reached the ground he was no longer a man but an owl. 15 The Story of the Creation. 16 Bilan, Mindanao. In the very beginning there lived a being so large that he cannot be compared with any known thing. His name was Melo. 17 And when he sat on the clouds, which were his home, he occupied all the space above. His teeth were pure gold, and because he was very cleanly and continually rubbed himself with his hands, his skin became pure white. The dead skin which he rubbed off his body 18 was placed on one side in a pile, and by this pile became so large that he was annoyed and set himself to consider what he could do with it. Finally Melo decided to make the earth, so he worked very hard in putting the dead skin into shape,
and when it was finished he was so pleased with it that he determined to make 2 beings like himself, though smaller, to live on it. Taking the remnants of the material left after making the earth, he fashioned 2 men, but just as they were all finished except their noses, Tautana from below the earth appeared and wanted to help him. Mello did not wish any assistance, and a great argument ensued. Tautana finally won his point and made the noses, which he placed on the people upside down. When all was finished, Mello and Tautana whipped the forms until they moved. Then Mello went to his home above the clouds, and Tautana returned to his place below the earth. All went well until one day a great rain came, and the people on the earth nearly drowned from the water which ran off their heads into their noses. Mello, from his place on the clouds, saw their danger, and he came quickly to earth and saved their lives by turning their noses the other side up. The people were very grateful to him, and promised to do anything he should ask of them. Before he left for the sky, they told him that they were very unhappy living on the great earth all alone, so he told them to save all the hair from their heads and the dry skin from their bodies, and the next time he came he would make them some companions. And in this way there came to be a great many people on the earth. In the beginning, Bylan, Mindanao. In the beginning there were 4 beings, 19, and they lived on an island no larger than a hat. On this island there were no trees or grass or any other living thing besides these 4 people and 1 bird. 20 One day they sent this bird out across the waters to see what he could find, and when he returned he brought some earth, a piece of rattan, and some fruit. Mello, the greatest of the 4, took the soil and shaped it and beat it with a paddle in the same manner in which a woman shapes pots of clay, and when he finished he had made the earth. Then he planted the seeds from the fruit, and they grew until there was much rattan and many trees bearing fruit. The 4 beings watched the growth for a long time and were well pleased with the work, but finally Mello said, "Of what use is this earth and all the rattan and fruit if there are no people?" And the others replied, "Let us make some people out of wax." So they took some wax and worked long, fashioning it into forms, but when they brought them to the fire the wax melted, and they saw that men could not be made in that way. Next they decided to try to use dirt in making people, and Mello and one of his companions began working on that. All went well till they were ready to make the noses. The companion, who was working on that part, put them on upside down. Mello told him that the people would drown if he left them that way, but he refused to change them. When his back was turned, however, Mello seized the noses, one by one, and turned them as they now are. But he was in such a hurry that he pressed his finger at the root, and it left a mark in the soft clay which you can still see on the faces of people. The children of the Limocan 21 Mandaya, Mindanao. In the very early days before there were any people on the earth, the Limocan, a kind of dove, 22 were very powerful and could talk like men though they looked like birds. One Limocan laid 2 eggs, one at the mouth of the Mayo River and one farther up its course. After some time these eggs hatched, and the one at the mouth of the river became a man, while the other became a woman. The man lived alone on the bank of the river for a long time, but he was very lonely and wished many times for a companion. One day when he was crossing the river something was swept against his legs with such force that it nearly caused him to drown. On examining it, he found that it was a hare, and he determined to go up the river and find whence it came. He traveled up the stream, looking on both banks, until finally he found the woman, and he was very happy to think that at last he could have a companion. They were married and had many children, who are the Mandaya still living along the Mayo River. The Sun and the Moon Mandaya, Mindanao. The Sun and the Moon were married, but the Sun was very ugly and quarrelsome. One day he became angry at the Moon and started to chase her. She ran very fast until she was some distance ahead of him, when she grew tired and he almost caught her. Ever since he has been chasing her, at times almost reaching her, and again falling far behind. The first child of the sun and moon was a large star, and he was like a man. One time the sun, becoming angry at the star, cut him up into small pieces and scattered him over the whole sky just as a woman scatters rice, and ever since there have been many stars. Another child of the sun and moon was a gigantic crab. 23 He still lives and is so powerful that every time he opens and closes his eyes there is a flash of lightning. Most of the time the crab lives in a large hole in the bottom of the sea, and when he is there we have high tide, but when he leaves the hole, the waters rush in and there is low tide. His moving about also causes great waves on the surface of the sea. The crab is quarrelsome like his father, and he sometimes becomes so angry with his mother, the moon, that he tries to swallow her. 24 When the people on earth, who are fond of the moon, see the crab near her, they run out of doors and shout and beat on gongs until he is frightened away, and thus the moon is saved. The Widow's Son. 25 Subanen, Mindanao. In a little house at the edge of a village lived a widow with her only son, and they were very happy together. The son was kind to his mother, and they made their living by growing rice in clearings on the mountainside and by hunting wild pig in the forest. One evening when their supply of meat was low, the boy said, "Mother, I am going to hunt pig in the morning, and I wish you would prepare rice for me before daylight." So the widow rose early and cooked the rice, and at dawn the boy started out with his spear and dog. Some distance from the village, he entered the thick forest. He walked on and on, ever on the lookout for game, but none appeared. At last, when he had traveled far and the sun was hot, he sat down on a rock to rest and took out his brass box 26 to get a piece of betel nut. He prepared the nut and leaf for chewing, and as he did so he wondered why it was that he had been so unsuccessful that day. But even as he pondered he heard his dog barking sharply, and cramming the betel nut into his mouth he leaped up and ran toward the dog. As he drew near he could see that the game was a fine large pig, all black save its 4 legs which were white. He lifted his spear and took aim, but before he could throw the pig started to run, and instead of going toward a watercourse it ran straight up the mountain. The boy went on in hot pursuit, and when the pig paused he again took aim, but before he could throw it ran on. 6 times the pig stopped just long enough for the boy to take aim, and then started on before he could throw. The 7th time, however, it halted on the top of a large flat rock and the boy succeeded in killing it. He tied its legs together with a piece of rattan and was about to start for home with the pig on his back, when to his surprise a door in the large stone swung open and a man stepped out. "Why have you killed my master's pig?" asked the man. "I did not know that this pig belonged to anyone," replied the widow's son. "I was hunting, as I often do, and when my dog found the pig I helped him to catch it." "Come in and see my master," said the man, and the boy followed him into the stone where he found himself in a large room. The ceiling and floor were covered with peculiar cloth that had 7 white stripes of red alternating with a like number of yellow stripes. When the master of the place appeared his trousers were of 7 colors, 27 as were also his jacket and the kerchief about his head. The master ordered betel nut, and when it was brought they chewed together. Then he called for wine, and it was brought in a jar so large that it had to be set on the ground under the house, and even then the top came so high above the floor that they brought a seat for the widow's son, and it raised him just high enough to drink from the reed in the top of the jar. He drank 7 cups of wine, and then they ate rice and fish and talked together. The master did not blame the boy for killing the pig, and declared that he wished to make a brother of him. So they became friends, and the boy remained 7 days in the stone. At the end of that time, he said that he must return to his mother who would be worried about him. In the early morning he left the strange house and started for home. At first he walked briskly, but as the morning wore on he went more slowly, and finally when the sun was high he sat down on a rock to rest. Suddenly looking up, he saw before him 7 men each armed with a spear, a shield, and a sword. They were dressed in different colors, and each man had eyes the same color as his clothes. The leader, who was dressed all in red with red eyes to match, spoke first, asking the boy where he was going. The boy replied that he was going home to his mother, who would be looking for him, and added, "Now I ask where you are going, all armed ready for war." "We are warriors," replied the man in red. "And we go up and down the world killing whatever we see that has life. Now that we have met you, we must kill you also." The boy, startled by this strange speech, was about to answer when he heard a voice near him say, "Fight, for they will try to kill you," and upon looking up he saw his spear, shield, and sword which he had left at home. Then he knew that the command came from a spirit, so he took his weapons and began to fight. For 3 days and nights they contended, and never before had the seven seen one man so brave. On the 4th day the leader was wounded and fell dead, and then, one by one, the other 6 fell. When they were all killed, the widow's son was so crazed with fighting that he thought no longer of returning home, but started out to find more to slay. In his wanderings he came to the home of a great giant whose house was already full of the men he had conquered in battle, and he called up from outside, "Is the master of the house at home? If he is, let him come out and fight." A net maker, a net maker. Bringing water from the stream, bringing water from the stream. This threw the giant into a rage, and seizing his shield and his spear, the shaft of which was the trunk of a tree, he sprang to the door and leaped to the ground, not waiting to go down the notched pole which served for steps. He looked around for his antagonist, and seeing only the widow's son he roared, "Where is the man that wants to fight? That thing? It is only a fly." The boy did not stop to answer, but rushed at the giant with his knife, and for 3 days and nights they struggled, till the giant fell, wounded at the waist. After that the widow's son stopped only long enough to burn the giant's house, and then rushed on looking for someone else to slay. Suddenly he again heard the voice which had bade him fight with the 7 men, and this time it said, "Go home now, for your mother is grieved at your absence." In a rage he sprang forward with his sword, though he could see no enemy. Then the spirit which had spoken to him made him sleep for a short time. When he awoke the rage was spent. Again the spirit appeared, and it said, "The 7 men whom you killed were sent to kill you by the spirit of the great stone, for he looked in your hand and saw that you were to marry the orphan girl whom he himself wished to wed. But you have conquered. Your enemies are dead. Go home now and prepare a great quantity of wine, for I shall bring your enemies to life again, and you will all live in peace." So the widow's son went home, and his mother, who had believed him dead, was filled with joy at his coming, and all the people in the town came out to welcome him. When he had told them his story, they hastened to get wine, and all day they bore jars full to the widow's house. That night there was a great feast, and the spirit of the great stone, his 7 warriors, the friendly spirit, and the giant all came. The widow's son married the orphan girl, while another beautiful woman became the wife of the spirit of the stone. Bagobos, Devo, Mindanao. Bagobos, Devo, Mindanao. 1. The common way to pound rice is to place a bundle of the grain on the ground on a dried carabao hide and pound it with a pestle to loosen the heads from the straw. When they are free they are poured into a mortar and again pounded with the pestle until the grain is separated from the chaff, after which it is winnowed. 2. According to the Clementine myth, Borneo, the sky was raised when a giant named Usai accidentally struck it with his mallet while pounding rice. See Hosen McDougall, Pagan Tribes of Borneo, page 142. 3. A somewhat similar belief that a giant crab is responsible for the tides is widespread throughout Malaysia. The Batak of Palawan now believe, as also do the Mandaya of eastern Mindanao, that the tides are caused by a giant crab going in and out of his hole in the sea. For the similarity of this to the biblical story of the flood leads us to suppose that it has come from the neighboring Christianized or Mohammedanized people and has been worked by the Bukidnon into the mold of their own thought. However, the flood story is sometimes found in such a guise that it cannot be accounted for by Christian influence. See for example, the flood story is told in the folklore of the Igorot tribe, on page 102. 5. This celestial myth accounts for a number of constellations which are of great importance to the Bukidnon. Magbangal appears in the sky in almost dipper shape, the handle being formed by his one remaining arm. To the west and nearly above him is a V-shaped constellation which is believed to be the jaw of one of the pigs which he killed. Still farther to the west appears the hill on which he hunted, while three groups of stars which toward dawn seem to be following him are said to be his hatchet, the bamboo pole in which he carried water, and his large pet lizard. It is the appearance and position of these constellations in the sky that show the Bukidnon when it is the time to clear land for the yearly crops and to plant the grain, and since this knowledge is of the utmost importance to the people, they feel that Magbangal does them a lasting service. The hero Lafang of a Borneo myth, who is represented by the constellation Orion, lost his arm while trying to cut down a tree in a manner different from that prescribed by his celestial wife, the constellation Pegasus. See Hosen McDougall, Pagan Tribes of Borneo, Volume 2, page 141. 6 Long knives. 7 Cloth is dyed in various colors by boiling it in water in which different kinds of leaves or roots have been steeped. But to produce a bluish-black shade, the fabric is partly buried in mud until the desired color is obtained. 8 Monkeys are numerous throughout the Philippines, and it is doubtless their human appearance and actions that have caused the different tribes to try to account for their origin from man. Here we have the most likely way that the Bukidnon can see for their coming. 9 This is one of a series of tales dealing with mythical heroes of former times whose acts of prowess are still recounted by Bukidnon warriors. 10 A heavy padded hemp coat with a kilt which is supposed to turn spears. Over the shoulder is worn a sash in which are a few peculiar stones and charms which are believed to protect its wearer. Warriors who have taken 30 human lives are permitted to wear a peculiar crown-shaped headdress with upstanding points. 11 See Note 1, page 23. 12 This is a good example of the way in which people at a certain stage try to account for their surroundings. Nearly all consider themselves the original people. We find the Bagobo no exception to this. In this tale, which is evidently very old, they account for themselves and their neighbors, and then, to meet present needs, they adapt the story to include the white people whom they have known for not more than 200 years. 13 These are evil spirits who have power to injure people. They are ugly to look at and go about eating anything, even dead persons. A young Bagobo described his idea of Abuso as follows: he has a long body, long feet and neck, curly hair, and black face, flat nose, and one big red or yellow eye. He has big feet and fingers, but small arms, and his 2 big teeth are long and pointed. Like a dog, he goes about eating anything, even dead persons. Cole, Wild Tribes of Davao District, Field Museum Nat History, Volume 12, Number 2, page 107. 14 This is evidently an old tale in which the storyteller introduces modern ideas. 15 Here, as is often the case, an origin story has been added to a tale with which it has no logical connection. 16 This story is well known among the Bilan, who are one of the tribes least influenced by the Spaniards, and yet it bears so many incidents similar to biblical accounts that there is a strong suggestion of Christian influence. It is possible that these ideas came through the Mohammedan Moro. 17 The most powerful of the spirits and the one to whom the people resort in times of danger. 18 A similar story is found in British North Borneo. C. Evans, Journal of Royal Anthropological Institute, 1913, page 423. 19 Melu, Fuway, Dewata, and Saway. 20 Bus Wit. 21 An origin story of a very different type from those of the Bukidnon and Bagobo. While the others show foreign influence, this appears to be typically primitive.
22. The omen bird of the Mandaya.
It is believed to be a messenger from the spirit world which, by its calls, warns the people of danger or promises them success. If the coo of this bird comes from the right side, it is a good sign, but if it is on the left, in back, or in front, it is a bad sign, and the Mandaya knows that he must change his plans.
23. The crab was called Tambanokano. 24. An eclipse of the moon.
This belief in a monster swallowing the moon and the wild efforts to frighten it away are very widespread. It is found among the Batak of Palawan and in other parts of Malaysia as well as in the South Sea, Mongol, Chinese, Siamese, and Hindu mythology. Even in Peru we find the belief that an evil spirit in the form of a beast was eating the moon, and that in order to scare it the people shouted and yelled and beat their dogs to make them add to the noise. C. Carlson, Journal of Religious Psychology, November, 1914, page 164.
25. First recorded by Emerson B. Christie.
26. A brass box having 3 compartments, one for lime, one for the nut, and another for the betel leaf, which is used in preparing the nut for chewing. 27. The Subanen have adopted the Moro dress, which consists of long trousers and a coat.
The tale shows strong Moro influence throughout.
7 is a mystic and magical number among the Malay.
It is constantly used in divination and magical practices and repeatedly occurs in their folklore. Skeet explains its importance by referring to the 7 souls which each mortal is supposed to possess. See Skeet, Malay Magic, page 50.